Your house has been sold. The words crackled through my phone at 3 in the morning Okinawa time. My neighbor Mrs. Patterson's voice was apologetic but urgent. I thought you should know before the new owners move in next week. I sat up in my barracks bunk, suddenly wide awake. What? Mrs. Patterson, there must be a mistake. I didn't sell my house. Your father and brother handled everything. They said you authorized it while you were deployed. The moving trucks came yesterday and cleared everything out. My hands started shaking. My name is Casey Williams. I'm a Marine Corps sergeant stationed in Okinawa, and I just learned that my father and brother had sold my house without my permission. The house I'd saved for 6 years to buy. The house that was my entire future. Mrs. Patterson, I never authorized anything. When did this happen? The sale closed 2 days ago. I'm so sorry, Casey. I assumed you knew. After we hung up, I sat in the dark trying to process what I'd just heard. My father, William, and my brother Kyle had somehow sold my property while I was 7,000 miles away serving my country. I immediately called my father. It was evening in California, and he answered on the third ring, his voice casual like nothing was wrong. What's up? What's up? Dad, Mrs. Patterson just told me you sold my house. Please tell me she's confused. There was a pause. Then, Kyle and I handled that for you. We got a great price, $250,000. Way above market value. The buyer was desperate and paid cash. I never asked you to sell my house. That's my property. Casey, you're deployed for another 6 months. The house was just sitting empty, costing you money in taxes and maintenance. This buyer came along offering way more than it's worth. We did you a favor. A favor? Dad, that's illegal. You can't sell someone else's property. Technically, I could. You gave me power of attorney before you deployed, remember? In case of emergencies? Well, this was an emergency financial opportunity. We had to act fast. I felt sick. I had given Dad limited power of attorney to handle emergencies, like if I got injured and couldn't manage my affairs. Not to sell my house. Where's the money? I demanded. If you sold my house for $250,000, where is it? Another pause, longer this time. Well, Kyle and I had some debts we needed to handle. We used part of the proceeds to clear those up. And there were fees, taxes, real estate commissions. How much is left? About $30,000. But Casey, we saved you from that money pit. That house was old, needed repairs. This way, you've got cash and no responsibilities. I wanted that house. I saved for 6 years to buy it. That was my home. You're never there anyway. You're always deployed somewhere. What do you need a house for? I was shaking with rage. Dad, what you did is fraud. I could have you arrested. Don't be dramatic. I'm your father. I was helping you. And technically, the power of attorney gave me the legal right to make financial decisions. Not to sell my house and pocket most of the money. Watch your tone. Kyle and I worked hard to get you that price. A little gratitude would be nice. I hung up before I said something I'd regret. My deadbeat brother Kyle, who'd never held a job longer than 3 months, had helped my father steal my house and my money. I immediately contacted the base legal office. Captain Morrison, the judge advocate, listened to my story with increasing concern. Sergeant Williams, this is serious. Do you have documentation of the power of attorney you granted your father? Yes, sir. It was specifically limited to medical and emergency financial decisions. Not selling my property. And the house was solely in your name? Yes, sir. I bought it 3 years ago with my VA loan. My father isn't on the deed or mortgage. Captain Morrison pulled up property records on his computer. The sale is recorded here. Closed 4 days ago. Buyer is listed as Maxwell Properties LLC. Purchase price $250,000, just like your father said. Can we reverse it? That's complicated. If your father exceeded his power of attorney, you could potentially sue for the proceeds. But unwinding a completed real estate transaction with a third-party buyer is extremely difficult, especially if they bought in good faith. My heart sank. So they're going to get away with this? Not necessarily. But we need more information. Something about this doesn't add up. Captain Morrison started digging deeper into the sale records while I tried to piece together what had happened. I called the title company that had handled the closing. "This is Sergeant Casey Williams. I'm calling about a property sale that closed last week. My house was sold without my knowledge." The title officer, a woman named Patricia, sounded concerned. "Without your knowledge? But we have your signature on all the closing documents." "That's impossible. I'm deployed in Okinawa. I haven't signed anything." "Hold on." I heard papers rustling. "The documents were notarized 4 days ago in Los Angeles. Your father presented power of attorney, and you signed via electronic signature authorized under that POA. Can you email me copies of everything? I think my father forged my authorization." Patricia's voice became very professional. "I'm going to put you on hold and connect you with our legal department." 20 minutes later, I had copies of all the closing documents. Captain Morrison and I reviewed them together. My signature appeared on multiple pages, but I'd never seen these documents before. "This is fraud," Captain Morrison confirmed. "The question is whether the buyer knew." I researched Maxwell Properties LLC. It was a Delaware corporation with minimal public information. The registered agent was a lawyer in Los Angeles named Victor Hayes. I called his office. "I need to speak with Mr. Hayes about Maxwell Properties LLC." "Mr. Hayes doesn't take unsolicited calls." "What is this regarding?" "He represents the company that bought my house while I was deployed overseas. The sale was fraudulent." That got his attention. 10 minutes later, Hayes called me back. "Sergeant Williams, I represent Maxwell Properties. Before we discuss anything, I need to verify your identity and your claim." I provided my military ID number, the property address, and details of the sale. Hayes was quiet for a moment. "Sergeant, I'm going to be very direct with you. Maxwell Properties is owned by my firm. We buy and flip properties. Your father and brother approached us with this deal. They presented power of attorney and assured us you'd authorized the sale. I didn't. I'm deployed in Okinawa. I had no idea this was happening. Then we have a serious problem." Hayes and I talked for over an hour. He explained that Maxwell Properties had purchased the house intending to renovate and resell it. They'd already invested $50,000 in initial repairs. "But here's the thing, Sergeant Williams," Hayes said carefully. "When we did the title search, something unusual came up. The property has a peculiar history." "What do you mean?" "The house was built in 1952 by a developer named Arthur Coleman. He sold it to various owners over the years, but there's a clause in the original deed that most people don't know about." "What kind of clause?" "A reversionary interest. It's an old legal mechanism that essentially means if certain conditions are met, ownership of the property can revert to Coleman's heirs." I was confused. "I don't understand. I bought the house 3 years ago. The title was clear." "The title was clear because the reversionary conditions hadn't been triggered. But they have been now." "What conditions?" "If the property is sold within 5 years of purchase without the owner's consent, ownership reverts to the Coleman Family Trust. Your father unknowingly triggered that clause when he sold your house fraudulently." My head was spinning. "So who owns my house now?" "Technically, you might still own it. Or the Coleman Trust might. It's a legal mess." Captain Morrison called in a real estate attorney from off-base to help sort through the situation. Commander Patricia Knox was a reservist with extensive property law experience. "This is fascinating," Knox said, reviewing the deed history. "Reversionary interests are extremely rare in modern property law. But this one is ironclad. Arthur Coleman inserted this clause into every property he developed, apparently after being defrauded himself in the 1940s. "So what happens now?" I asked. "It depends. If the Coleman Family Trust wants to enforce the reversionary interest, they can reclaim the property. Maxwell Properties would lose their investment, your father's sale would be void, and you'd be back to square one." "But I'd have my house back?" "Potentially. But there's another complication. The Coleman Trust is run by Arthur Coleman's grandson, Troy Coleman. And he's very interested in this property specifically." Hayes, who joined us on a conference call, interjected. "Troy Coleman contacted me yesterday. He knows about the sale and the reversionary clause. He wants the property back. But what's special about my house? Knox pulled up historical records. Your property is the last remaining Coleman development that hasn't been demolished or significantly altered. Troy Coleman is an architectural preservationist. He's been trying to protect his grandfather's legacy. The next day, I got an email directly from Troy Coleman himself. He tracked down my military email through the property records and wanted to talk. We set up a video call. Troy was a man in his early 60s, with gray hair and passionate eyes. He sat in front of a wall covered with old photographs of buildings. "Sergeant Williams, thank you for meeting with me. I'm sorry about the circumstances. Mr. Coleman, I'm just trying to understand what's happening with my house. Your house is one of my grandfather's original designs from 1952. He was an innovative builder who created affordable housing for veterans returning from World War II. Your property is the last intact example of his work." He pulled up old blueprints. My grandfather inserted reversionary clauses into all his deeds because he'd been cheated out of several properties by unscrupulous dealers. He wanted to ensure his buildings went to people who'd actually live in them and appreciate them. "I did appreciate it," I said. "I love that house. I'm a veteran too. I bought it specifically because it felt like home." Troy's expression softened. "I know. I've researched you, Sergeant. Marine Corps, multiple deployments, exemplary service record. You're exactly the kind of person my grandfather built these houses for." "So what happens now?" I asked Troy. "Do you take my house because my father sold it illegally?" "That's what I wanted to discuss. I have the legal right to reclaim the property under the reversionary clause. But I don't want to punish you for your father's fraud. You're a victim here." "Then what do you want?" "I want to preserve my grandfather's legacy, and I want to make this right for you. Here's my proposal. I'll invoke the reversionary clause, which voids your father's sale and returns the property to me. Then I'll sell it back to you for exactly what you originally paid for it 3 years ago." I was stunned. "Why would you do that?" "Because my grandfather would have wanted it that way. He built these houses for veterans who'd served their country. You're serving your country right now. It would dishonor his memory to profit from your misfortune. But you'd be losing money. The house is worth more now than what I paid. I can afford it. And more importantly, it's the right thing to do. But there are conditions." My guard went up. "What conditions?" "You can never sell to a developer or flipper. The house must remain a single-family residence. And you have to maintain its historical character, no major exterior alterations that would destroy my grandfather's design." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Mr. Coleman, you're offering to help me get my house back?" "I'm offering to invoke a legal right that voids the fraudulent sale and then transfer the property to you under terms that protect my grandfather's legacy and your interests." Captain Morrison, who was listening in, asked, "What about Maxwell Properties? They've invested $50,000 in repairs." Troy smiled. "I've already spoken with Victor Hayes. Maxwell Properties will be compensated for their good faith investment. They bought the property under false pretenses created by Sergeant Williams' father. They shouldn't lose money because of his fraud." "How will you compensate them?" "I'm buying them out. They'll get their purchase price plus their renovation costs, plus a reasonable profit for their trouble. Everyone's made whole except the people who committed fraud." Hayes came on the line. "Troy and I have worked out an agreement. Maxwell Properties withdraws any claim to the property, Troy invokes the reversionary clause, and we're compensated fairly. We're satisfied with the arrangement." I felt tears welling up. After days of panic and rage, someone was actually helping me. "Mr. Coleman, I don't know what to say. Say you'll take care of my grandfather's house and appreciate what it represents." Over the next week, the legal machinery started moving. Troy Coleman filed papers invoking the reversionary clause. Maxwell Properties agreed to the buyout, and I began the process of reclaiming ownership of my house. But there was still the matter of my father and brother. Captain Morrison was blunt about it. "Sergeant Williams, what your father did is criminal fraud. You have grounds to press charges." "I know, but he's my father. Who stole your house and pocketed most of the money?" $250,000 in sale proceeds, and he's claiming only $30,000 is left? Where did the rest go? I'd been wondering the same thing. I called my younger sister Amber, who still lived near Dad and Kyle. She was the only family member I really trusted. Amber, I need you to be honest with me. Do you know what Dad and Kyle did with the money from selling my house? There was a long silence. Casey, I was hoping you wouldn't find out. Find out what? Kyle had gambling debts. Bad ones. He owed money to some dangerous people. Dad used most of your money to pay them off. My blood ran cold. How much? Over $150,000. I felt sick. My father had sold my house and used the money to bail out my deadbeat brother's gambling debts. Money I'd saved for 6 years, sacrificed for, deployed multiple times to earn, gone to pay off Kyle's bookies. Amber, why didn't anyone tell me? Dad made us promise not to. He said it was handled, that Kyle was getting help. But Casey... She started crying. Kyle's still gambling. He didn't learn anything. And Dad's in denial about all of it. What about the other $70,000? Dad said only $30,000 was left. Dad bought himself a new car. And he paid off his credit cards. He said he deserved it for dealing with Kyle's mess. I sat there processing this. My father had committed fraud to save my brother, then rewarded himself with my money. And now he was acting like he'd done me a favor. Captain Morrison had been listening. Sergeant, you need to decide. Do you press charges or let this go? If I press charges, my father goes to prison. If you don't, he gets away with stealing over $200,000 from you. And your brother faces no consequences for the gambling addiction that started all this. I spent 2 days wrestling with the decision. Part of me wanted my father to face justice. Part of me couldn't bear the thought of putting my own father in prison. Troy Coleman called me. Sergeant Williams, I've been thinking about your situation. May I offer some perspective? Please. My grandfather always said that family is complicated, but integrity isn't. Your father violated your trust in the most fundamental way. He stole from you and then lied about it. That's not family, that's betrayal. I know. But he's still my father. My grandfather had a brother who embezzled from him in 1948. Stole over $50,000, which was a fortune back then. My grandfather had him arrested and testified at his trial. People told him he was heartless, that family should forgive family. What did your grandfather say? He said, I love my brother, but I won't let love for him enable his stealing from others. If I don't hold him accountable, I'm just helping him hurt the next person. His brother went to prison for 3 years. When he got out, he never stole again, got his life together, and eventually thanked my grandfather for holding him accountable. That's a nice story, but the point is that accountability isn't punishment. It's love. Real love holds people accountable for their actions. I thought about Troy's words. Then I thought about Kyle, still gambling, facing no consequences. And my father, who'd bought himself a new car with money stolen from his deployed daughter. I called Captain Morrison. I want to press charges. Are you sure? No. But it's the right thing to do. If I let this go, Kyle learns that Dad will always bail him out and I'll always absorb the damage. And Dad learns that he can steal from me without consequences. That's not love. That's enabling. Captain Morrison connected me with the district attorney's office in Los Angeles. I filed a formal complaint detailing the fraud. The DA was very interested, especially when I provided documentation of the forged signatures and unauthorized use of power of attorney. 3 days later, my father called me furious. You called the police on me? Your own father. You stole my house and my money. What did you expect? I was helping Kyle. He would have been hurt if I hadn't paid those debts. So you stole from me to save him? Dad, do you hear yourself? Family helps family. But apparently, you'd rather send your father to prison than show a little understanding. Understanding? You sold my house, kept most of the money, and acted like you did me a favor. That's not help, that's theft. My father hung up on me. An hour later, Kyle called, crying. Casey, please. Drop the charges against Dad. He was just trying to help me. This is all my fault. You're right, It is your fault. You gambled away $150,000 of my money. I have a problem, okay? I'm getting help now. But if Dad goes to prison because of me... Kyle, you've been saying you'll get help for 5 years. Dad's enabled you this entire time. Maybe if you both face actual consequences, something will finally change. You've always been so perfect, Kyle spat, his tone changing. Perfect grades, perfect military career, perfect life. Meanwhile, the rest of us struggle, and you judge us from your high horse. I'm not perfect, but I don't steal from family to cover my gambling debts. You're going to regret this, Casey. Family is all that matters, and you're destroying ours. After he hung up, I sat in my barracks room wondering if I was doing the right thing. But then I thought about my house, the house I'd saved for, the house I'd loved, the house that represented my future. Gone because of their choices, not mine. The district attorney moved quickly. Within 2 weeks, my father was indicted on fraud and forgery charges. Kyle was charged as an accessory. The prosecutor explained they had an airtight case. The forged signatures, the unauthorized sale, the confession my father had made to me about using the power of attorney to sell the house. Meanwhile, Troy Coleman was finalizing the reversal of the sale. The reversionary clause was invoked, Maxwell Properties was compensated, and ownership of the house reverted to the Coleman Family Trust. Then Troy did exactly what he'd promised. He sold the house back to me for the original price I'd paid 3 years ago, $175,000. Mr. Coleman, I can't thank you enough, I said during our final video call. You don't need to thank me. My grandfather built that house for people like you. I'm just making sure it ends up where it belongs. Still, you're losing money on this deal. Money isn't everything, Sergeant. Legacy is. Integrity is. Doing right by people who serve our country is. Those matter more than profit. The house was mine again. I had to take out a new mortgage, but it was manageable with my military pay. And this time, I made sure absolutely nobody had power of attorney over my property. My father's trial was scheduled for 3 months later. In the meantime, my family fractured. My mother, who'd been silent through all of this, finally called me. Casey, I need you to drop the charges against your father. Mom, he stole from me. He made a mistake. He was trying to help Kyle. Family forgives mistakes. This wasn't a mistake. It was calculated fraud over several months. He knew exactly what he was doing. If you go through with this, you'll tear this family apart. Dad tore the family apart when he decided Kyle's gambling debts were more important than my home. I'm just holding him accountable. Mom started crying. I can't lose your father to prison. Please, Casey. I'm begging you. Where were you when Dad was selling my house? Did you know about it? Silence. Then quietly, I knew. I told him it was wrong, but he said Kyle would get hurt if we didn't help him. I thought you'd understand. I felt like I'd been punched. You knew and you let it happen? I didn't think you'd find out until you got back from deployment. By then, it would be done and we could explain. Explain how you stole from me? She was crying harder now. I'm your mother. I love you. Please don't do this. Mom, if you loved me, you wouldn't have let Dad steal my house. I hung up. Amber called me later that night. Casey, I'm on your side. What they did was wrong. But this is destroying the family. Dad and Mom aren't speaking to me because I won't pressure you to drop the charges. Kyle's telling everyone you're heartless. Thanksgiving is going to be a nightmare. I'm deployed. I won't be at Thanksgiving anyway. You know what I mean. This family is falling apart. It fell apart the moment Dad decided my house was worth less than Kyle's gambling debts. I'm just the one who won't pretend everything's fine. I know. And I support you. But it's hard being caught in the middle. You don't have to be in the middle, Amber. You can have your own position. My position is that Dad and Kyle were wrong, but I still love them. Can both things be true? Yes. I still love them too. But I won't let that love be an excuse for theft. We talked for another hour. Amber was the only family member who seemed to understand that accountability and love weren't mutually exclusive. The trial happened while I was still in Okinawa. I testified via video link, explaining how I discovered the sale, how my father had admitted to using the power of attorney to sell the house, and how the money had been used to pay Kyle's gambling debts. My father's lawyer tried to paint me as ungrateful and vindictive, but the facts were clear. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. My father was sentenced to 18 months in federal prison and ordered to pay restitution of $200,000. Kyle, as an accessory, got 6 months and mandatory gambling addiction treatment. The day of sentencing, my father made a statement to the court. "I'm a father who made a terrible mistake trying to protect one child and ended up hurting another. I accept responsibility for my actions, but I want my daughter Casey to know that I did what I thought was best at the time." The judge wasn't sympathetic. "Mr. Williams, you didn't make a mistake. You committed calculated fraud against your own daughter while she was deployed serving our country. This court finds your actions particularly egregious." After sentencing, my mother left me a voicemail. "I hope you're happy. Your father is going to prison because you couldn't forgive him. I hope it was worth destroying your family." I wasn't happy. I was sad and angry and relieved all at once. But I also felt something else, vindicated. My family had dismissed me, stolen from me, and expected me to just accept it. Instead, I'd fought back and won. Troy Coleman called me after the sentencing. "Sergeant Williams, I heard about the verdict. How are you holding up?" "Honestly? I don't know. Part of me feels guilty, like maybe I should have found another way." "There was no other way. Your father stole from you and showed no remorse until he faced consequences. You did the right thing." "My mother doesn't think so. Half my family isn't speaking to me." "The half that enabled your father's fraud and your brother's gambling addiction? Sounds like you're better off." I laughed bitterly. "That's a harsh way to put it, but accurate. Sergeant, you've served your country with honor. You saved for 6 years to buy a home. Your father stole it from you to bail out your brother, then acted like you should thank him. Anyone who sides with him over you isn't family, they're enablers." Over the following months, I stayed in Okinawa completing my deployment. The house sat empty in California, waiting for me. Troy hired a property manager to maintain it until I returned. 6 months later, I finally came home. The flight from Okinawa to Los Angeles felt surreal. I was returning to a house I'd almost lost, in a family that would never be the same. Troy Coleman met me at the house with the keys. He'd arranged for it to be cleaned and for the utilities to be turned on. "Welcome home, Sergeant Williams." I walked through the front door and stopped. The house looked exactly as I remembered it, but also different. Maxwell Properties renovations had updated the kitchen and bathrooms while preserving the original 1952 character. "Mr. Coleman, this is beautiful. My grandfather would be proud. This house is back where it belongs, with someone who appreciates it." We walked through the rooms together. Troy pointed out original features: the built-in shelving, the distinctive window frames, the hardwood floors that his grandfather had installed 70 years ago. "My grandfather believed homes should have soul," Troy said. "He built these houses right after World War II for veterans who'd sacrificed everything. He wanted them to feel safe and welcomed." "I feel that," I admitted. "Even with everything that happened, this house feels like home." "Because it is home. And now you can enjoy it without worrying about your father taking it away." My father was released from federal prison after serving 14 months. I didn't visit him while he was incarcerated, and I didn't contact him when he got out. He sent me a letter 3 weeks after his release. "Casey, I've had a lot of time to think about what I did to you. The prison counselor helped me understand that I enabled Kyle his entire life and hurt you in the process. I was wrong to sell your house. I was wrong to use your money for Kyle's debts. I was wrong to lie to you and act like I'd done you a favor. I'm sorry. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I wanted you to know that I finally understand what I took from you. Not just the house, but your trust. Your sense of safety in your own family. I'm trying to be better. Kyle is in real treatment now, 9 months sober from gambling. I'm paying back your restitution $100 a month. It'll take years, but I owe you that and more. If you're ever willing to talk, I'd like to try to make amends. But I understand if you're not." Left it. I read the letter 3 times. It sounded genuine, but I'd been burned before. I showed it to Amber, who'd remained in contact with both me and Dad. "He's different," Amber said. "Prison changed him. He's actually taking responsibility now instead of making excuses." "And Kyle?" "Really in treatment. He hasn't gambled in 9 months. He's working at a warehouse, living in a halfway house. It's not glamorous, but he's facing his addiction." I thought about my father's letter for weeks. Troy Coleman's words echoed in my mind. Accountability isn't punishment. It's love. Maybe holding Dad accountable had been the loving thing to do. Maybe facing consequences had finally forced him and Kyle to change. I wrote back, "Dad, thank you for your letter. I'm not ready to see you or have a relationship yet, but I appreciate you taking responsibility. Keep working on yourself and helping Kyle. Maybe someday we can rebuild something, but it will take time. Casey." It was the truth. I wasn't ready to forgive, but I was open to the possibility that someday I might be. Meanwhile, I settled back into my house. My neighbors welcomed me home. Mrs. Patterson brought over cookies and apologized again for not knowing the sale was fraudulent. "You tried to warn me," I told her. "You did everything right." Troy Coleman became a friend. He'd visit occasionally to check on the house and share stories about his grandfather. Through him, I learned about the other families who'd lived in my home over the decades: veterans, working families, people who'd built lives within these walls. "You're part of that legacy now," Troy said. My grandfather would have been proud. 2 years after the fraud, I was promoted to staff sergeant. I had my promotion ceremony in my backyard, with Troy Coleman, Mrs. Patterson, Amber, and several of my Marine Corps friends in attendance. My father and Kyle weren't there, but Amber told me later that Dad had asked about it, had wanted to know how I was doing. "Tell him I'm doing well," I said. "Tell him I have a beautiful home and a life I've built through my own work. Tell him I'm happy." Because I was happy. The house my father and brother had sold while I was in Okinawa, the house I'd almost lost forever, was mine again. Not because of family connections or special treatment, but because someone with integrity had helped me fight for what was rightfully mine. Troy Coleman had taught me that legacy matters, that doing the right thing matters even when it's difficult, and that sometimes strangers show more loyalty than blood relatives. My dad and deadbeat brother had sold my home while I was in Okinawa, thinking they'd gotten away with it. But that house was protected by a 70-year-old reversionary clause, defended by an honorable man who valued justice, and ultimately returned to the veteran who'd earned it through service and sacrifice. I stood in my backyard after the promotion ceremony, looking at the house Arthur Coleman had built in 1952 for veterans like me. The house that had survived fraud, legal battles, and family betrayal to end up exactly where it belonged. My father had tried to take my home. Instead, he taught me who my real family was, not the people who shared my blood, but the people who stood by me when everything fell apart. And that lesson, painful as it was, had been worth learning.